Okay, this story started when I realized Mean Girls relates to the spread of Chinese civilization to Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. So one day, I was taking AP notes for world history and then
Pow!
the idea hit me. Regina George is China, Gretchen Wieners is Japan, Karen Smith is Korea, and Katie Heron is Vietnam. So let's start with the almighty ruler, Regina George, also known as China. In the movie, Regina is the head plastic, dominating high school with their power. When we compare it to China in the time period of 500 to 1450, they have a lot of similarities. They both isolated themselves from the outside world since there was no better example for them to admire. They were xenophobic to barbaric influences. There was constant warfare with those of contrasting interests. They forced their ideas, culture, and beliefs onto weaker individuals. In the end, both Regina and China lost control. Moving on to Gretchen Wieners, who represents Japan. Gretchen Wieners is Regina's best friend for the longest time, which means she was the most influenced. Japan absorbed all aspects of China's Persia in the Taika forms of 646, just like Gretchen was influenced by Regina. Appearance and status was everything to them. This was obvious in the use of tea ceremonies and geisha, for Gretchen her diet, makeup, and status as a plastic. They rejected China in the end as the Chinese power weakened with the end of the Tang dynasty. By 838, the Japanese court discontinued its embassies to the Tang. They forged their own national identities in the end, completely rejecting the Chinese. Also in the movie, The Tale of
Genji!
represents the burn book, The Tale of
Genji!
written by Lady Murasaki, was about the late life in Japan. The burn book was the view of elites on society in high school. The principal, Mr. Duval, also had a similar role as the Bushi in Japan. They both administered the law to be enforced by others, in this case Miss Norbury, the teacher, and the samurai of Japan, who protected the people. The Fujiwara, the aristocratic family in Japan during the 19th century, is represented by all the boyfriends of the plastics. This is because the Fujiwara packed family members into upper administration, gaining power through relationship, just like whoever dated the plastics gained power. Now, there's Karen Smith, the Korea of Mean Girls. Like Karen, the continuing political disunity allowed the Chinese to come and take control, similar to how Karen was really stupid and did whatever Regina said.
Bashela Dynasty.
Of Korea copied the Chinese Tang dynasty through learning, arts, and manufactured goods, basically Karen copying Regina's manner, makeup, and clothes. Civil rebellions within Korea caused the downfall of the
Sheila and Koryo Dynasty.
like the four-way phone call of the plastics they had in Mean Girls caused internal conflicts within the plastics. Finally, out of the plastics, there's Katie Heron, who is Vietnam. Katie originally had her own identity but conformed to Regina's will, but under some resistance because of traditional ideas and of the increased pressure to be popular. In this situation, Katie is the same as Vietnam. They both feared losing their own identity since they were the most traditional. Vietnam absorbed Han Dynasty China in order to advance their own society, but in the end revolted and made fun of the Han, like how Katie became a plastic but only to mess with Regina George. They took charge when their opponent was at the weakest, when there was political turmoil in China like the fall of Tang Dynasty in 907. The Vietnamese gained independence. In Mean Girls, when Regina lost her hot body and her army escaped, Katie took power over the plastics. Once independent, they rediscovered their identities. Vietnam no longer tried to assimilate into Chinese culture and force the Chinese out. Katie went her separate way with the plastics and attended the mathletes instead of prom. Some influence will always be there. China with Vietnam, as with Katie and Regina. Also in the movie, Katie's parents represent North and South Vietnam. Each sought to unite Vietnam under a monarchy. In the movie, Katie's parents sought to control it. All four countries had similar internal conflict with aristocrats and Buddhists. Both the aristocrats and Buddhists plotted to take down imperial control. In the movie, they were represented by Janice and Damien. Furthermore, the entire high school population describes the peasants in these countries. As you can see, the spread of Chinese civilization to Japan, Korea, and Vietnam correlates with the movie Mean Girls. Overall, all the main countries or characters fought back against the main power and succeeded, but had a lasting impact from the main powers, China and Regina.